I still remember that day perfectly. The smell of fresh coffee in the conference room, the hushed voices of my colleagues discussing quarterly projections, and the weight of my phone as it vibrated in my pocket. I was the marketing coordinator at Davidson & Smith, a mid-sized consulting firm in Chicago, and we were in the middle of our weekly strategy meeting. My boss, Richard Davidson, was in the middle of his presentation when my phone lit up. I tried to discreetly check the message, but Richard's eyes caught the movement. Our eyes met briefly, and I expected a disapproving glare. We had a strict no phones policy during meetings. Instead, his face went pale. "Emma," he said, cutting himself off mid-sentence, "grab your bag and leave the building right now." Everyone turned to look at me, confusion evident on their faces. I froze, unable to process what was happening. "Now, Emma," Richard insisted, his voice low and urgent. "Take the service elevator, don't stop for anything, go straight to the parking garage." I glanced down at my phone and saw the message that had triggered this reaction. "I'm coming to your office. We need to talk. This ends today. Mark." Mark, my ex-husband, the man I'd been hiding from for the past 8 months. "He's already on his way," Richard added, moving toward me. "I'll handle this. Just go." I stood up, my legs shaking. My colleagues stared in silence as Richard ushered me toward the door. As we stepped into the hallway, he grabbed my arm. "Emma, listen carefully. Take this." He pressed a key into my palm. "It's to my lake house in Michigan. The address is in my contacts on your work email. Go there and wait for my call." "Richard, I don't understand. There's no time. Mark called the front desk 5 minutes ago. He's in the building." My blood ran cold. "How did he find me?" "I don't know, but you need to leave. Now." As I rushed down the hallway, clutching my bag, I heard the elevator doors open at the far end of the corridor. And there he was, Mark, his face hardened with anger, his eyes searching. Our gazes locked for just a second before Richard stepped between us, blocking Mark's view. "Run!" Richard whispered forcefully. And I did. I ducked into the service stairwell, my heart pounding in my chest. 8 months of careful planning, of living in shadows, of changing my name and appearance, all undone in an instant. How had he found me? I'd been so careful. As I descended the stairs, memories flooded back. The gradual isolation, the controlling behavior that evolved into something more sinister the night I finally escaped, with nothing but a backpack and the clothes on my back. The restraining order that seemed to mean nothing to him. I reached the parking garage, fumbling with my keys. As I started my car, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the rear-view mirror, the brown hair dye I'd used to cover my natural blonde, the glasses I didn't need but wore anyway, the subtle ways I'd tried to change my appearance. None of it had worked. The drive out of Chicago was a blur. My phone rang repeatedly. Richard, checking if I was safe. I couldn't answer while driving, but I sent a quick text at a red light. On the road, heading to the address. 3 hours later, I pulled up to a secluded cabin nestled among tall pines on the shores of Lake Michigan. It was growing dark, and the first stars were appearing in the purple sky. The cabin looked peaceful, untouched by the chaos of the day. I unlocked the door with shaking hands and stepped inside. The interior was rustic but comfortable. A large living room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, and what looked like 2 bedrooms down a short hallway. My phone rang again. Richard. "Emma, are you there? Are you safe?" "Yes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm at the cabin. Richard, how did he find me?" There was a pause on the other end. "I don't know for certain, but he came prepared, Emma. He had photos of you entering and leaving the building, recent photos." My stomach dropped. "He's been watching me." "It seems that way. Listen, I've called the police. They're looking for him now, but..." Richard hesitated. "He left before they arrived, and he was..." Determined. What did he say? He said he knew you were working for me, that you belonged with him, that he wouldn't stop until he found you. Richard's voice grew softer. Emma, there's something else. He mentioned things about your past, about us, that he shouldn't know. I sank onto the couch, a chill running through me despite the warmth of the cabin. What do you mean? He knew about Aspen, about what happened there. The room seemed to spin around me. Aspen, 5 years ago, before I'd even met Mark, a weekend that only Richard and I knew about, a weekend we'd both agreed never to speak of again. That's impossible, I whispered. I never told anyone about that. Not even your husband, Richard finished. I know, which means someone else told him. But who would... A noise outside cut me off. A car engine growing louder, then stopping. Headlights swept across the windows, illuminating the room for a brief moment before darkness returned. Richard, I whispered, my heart in my throat, I think someone's here. The headlights outside the cabin went dark, plunging the room back into shadow. Through the phone, I could hear Richard's breathing quicken. Emma, get to a secure room, lock the door. Is there a landline in the cabin? I don't know, I stammered, my eyes darting around the unfamiliar space. The headlights had been turned off, but I could hear car doors closing outside, followed by footsteps on gravel. Check the kitchen, Richard instructed, and grab something to defend yourself just in case. I moved to the kitchen, trying to stay away from the windows. There was indeed an old corded phone on the wall. Found one, I whispered. Good. Call 911. Give them the address. I'm 3 hours away, but I'm leaving now. The footsteps outside grew closer. I grabbed a knife from the wooden block on the counter, my hand trembling so badly I nearly dropped it. Richard, I'm scared. Stay on the line with me, he said firmly. Don't hang up. A knock at the door made me jump. Then a voice, not Mark's, called out. Ms. Collins? Emma Collins. This is Officer Peterson with the Michigan State Police. We were sent by the Chicago PD. Are you in there? Relief washed over me, but caution kept me from rushing to the door. Richard, there's a police officer outside. Ask for identification, Richard advised. Make sure it's legitimate before you open the door. I approached the door slowly. Can you show me your badge? I called out. Of course, ma'am. Through the peephole, I could see a uniformed officer holding up a badge. Behind him, a police cruiser was parked in the driveway, its lights off, but the distinctive shape unmistakable in the moonlight. I opened the door, a crack, chain still in place. The officer smiled reassuringly. Ms. Collins, we received a call about a potential threat to your safety. Chicago PD contacted us, and we've been patrolling the area. May I come in to ensure the premises are secure? I removed the chain and stepped back, still clutching the phone to my ear. Richard, the police are here. I think it's okay. The officer entered, his eyes professionally scanning the room. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with close-cropped hair and alert eyes. You can put the knife down, ma'am, he said gently, noticing the blade still in my hand. You're safe now. I set it on the side table, suddenly embarrassed. Sorry, it's been a difficult day. Understandable. He moved further into the room. Is anyone else here with you? No, just me. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. I'm going to check the perimeter of the house, make sure everything's secure. Would you mind if my partner comes in while I do that? She's in the car. Of course, I said, the tension in my shoulders beginning to ease. The officer stepped back to the door and signaled. A moment later, a female officer entered, her uniform identical to her partner's. This is Officer Davis, Peterson explained. She'll stay with you while I check outside. As Peterson headed out, Officer Davis smiled warmly. You've had quite a scare, haven't you? Why don't you sit down? You look pale. I sank onto the couch, suddenly aware of how exhausted I was. Richard, I spoke into the phone, the police are here. They're checking the house. Good, Richard replied, and I could hear the relief in his voice. Ask them if they can stay with you until I arrive. I relayed the question to Officer Davis, who nodded. Of course we can stay, she said. We've been instructed to remain until the threat is neutralized. Thank you, I said, feeling tears well up in my eyes. For the first time since seeing Mark in the hallway, I allowed myself to believe I might be safe. Officer Davis sat across from me, her posture relaxed but alert. Can I get you some water? She offered. That would be nice, thank you. As she went to the kitchen, I spoke to Richard again. They're going to stay until you get here. Drive safely, okay? I will. Emma, about what Mark said, about Aspen. We can talk about that when you get here, I interrupted, not wanting to discuss our past with strangers nearby. Right, of course. Richard paused. Emma, there's something else you should know. When Mark came to the office, he wasn't alone. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean? There was a woman with him. She stayed in the background, but... Emma, I think it was Sarah. The name hit me like a physical blow. Sarah, my former best friend, the maid of honor at my wedding, the person who'd helped me pack when I left Mark, who'd sworn she'd never tell him where I was. That's impossible, I whispered. Sarah wouldn't. I'm almost certain it was her, Richard insisted. She's been helping him look for you. Officer Davis returned with a glass of water, her expression concerned. Everything okay? I nodded automatically, trying to process this new betrayal. Just getting some surprising news. Drink some water, she urged. It'll help with the shock. I took the glass gratefully and sipped. The cool liquid was soothing against my dry throat. Outside, I could hear Officer Peterson's footsteps circling the cabin. The sound was oddly comforting, proof that I was being protected, that I wasn't alone. Richard, I said into the phone, if Sarah's helping him, she might know about this place too, your lake house. No, that's not possible, Richard assured me. I only purchased it 3 months ago. No one from the office knows about it except my realtor and my lawyer. That was something at least, a small measure of security. Officer Davis was watching me with an intensity that made me slightly uncomfortable. I smiled weakly at her, then turned my attention back to the call. How long until you get here? I asked Richard. About 2.5 hours, if traffic is light. Try to get some rest if you can. The police will keep you safe. As if on cue, Officer Peterson returned, stamping his feet on the porch before entering. All clear outside, he announced. No signs of anyone approaching. You're safe here, Ms. Collins. I thanked him, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The adrenaline that had kept me going was starting to fade. I think I should try to rest, I told Richard. Call me when you're close. Of course. And Emma, I'm sorry about all this. About Mark finding you. About Aspen coming back to haunt us. It's not your fault, I said softly, though part of me wondered if that was true. I'll see you soon. As I ended the call, Officer Davis stood up. Would you like me to make you something to eat? You should keep your strength up. No, thank you. I think I just need to lie down for a while. Of course, she said with a sympathetic smile. We'll be right out here if you need anything. I retreated to one of the bedrooms, closing the door behind me. The room was simple, a queen-sized bed with a patchwork quilt, a small dresser, and a window overlooking the lake. In the distance, I could see the moon's reflection shimmering on the water. I lay down on the bed, not bothering to change out of my work clothes. My mind raced with questions. How had Mark found me? Why would Sarah betray me? And what did Aspen have to do with any of this? As exhaustion pulled me towards sleep, a nagging feeling kept me from fully relaxing. Something Officer Davis had said, something that didn't quite fit. We've been instructed to remain until the threat is neutralized. The phrasing struck me as odd. Not until I'm safe, not until my ex-husband is apprehended, but until the threat is neutralized. I sat up in bed, suddenly alert. Through the closed door, I could hear the officers speaking in hushed tones. I crept closer to the door, straining to hear their conversation. "Should be arriving within the hour," Officer Peterson was saying. "He said to keep her calm until then." "She doesn't suspect anything," Davis replied. "Poor thing thinks she's being protected." My blood turned to ice in my veins. These weren't police officers. I pressed my ear against the door, my heart pounding so loudly I feared they would hear it. "Mark was very specific about keeping her unharmed," the woman who called herself Officer Davis continued. "He wants to handle this personally." "Rich people and their drama," Peterson scoffed. $10,000 is $10,000 though. Plus whatever's in that safe he mentioned. My mind raced. Safe? What safe? Richard had never mentioned a safe in the cabin. "Did he say where it is?" Peterson asked. "Somewhere in the master bedroom, behind a painting apparently." I backed away from the door, trying to steady my breathing. These people weren't police. They were hired by Mark, and they were waiting for him to arrive within the hour. I glanced around the room frantically, looking for an escape route. The window was my only option. I moved toward it quietly, testing whether it would open. It slid up with a slight creak that made me freeze, listening for any reaction from the fake officers. Their conversation continued uninterrupted. I pushed the window up further, feeling the cool night air rush in. The drop was about 10 feet to the ground, not ideal but manageable. But where would I go once outside? Mark would be arriving soon, and I had no car keys, no phone, nothing. My phone? I patted my pockets, then remembered with a sinking feeling that I'd left it on the couch when Officer Davis offered me water. Stupid, stupid mistake. Think, Emma. What would Richard do? Richard. He was still driving here, still hours away. He had no idea I was in immediate danger. The landline in the kitchen. If I could somehow get to it, call for real help. I eased the window closed again. Running blindly into the woods wouldn't save me. I needed a plan. I scanned the room again, this time noticing a vent near the ceiling. The fake officers had mentioned a safe behind a painting. If Richard owned this cabin, maybe he had hidden other things as well. I dragged the desk chair quietly beneath the vent and climbed up. The metal grate came away easily, and I reached inside, my fingers brushing against something cold and metallic. I pulled it out, a small black handgun, along with a box of ammunition. My hands trembled as I held it. I'd never fired a gun before, but Richard had. He'd mentioned going to shooting ranges, talking about self-defense. Had he purposely hidden this here? A voice from the other room jolted me back to reality. "I'm going to check on her," Davis announced. "Make sure she's still asleep." I scrambled off the chair, sliding the gun under the pillow just as a soft knock came at the door. "Ms. Collins, are you awake?" Davis called, her voice still maintaining that false concern. I rumpled my hair quickly and opened the door, feigning grogginess. "Is everything okay?" Davis smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just checking on you. There's been an update. Your boss called the station. He's been delayed and won't be here until morning." A lie. Richard would have called my cell phone, not some fictional police station. "Oh," I said, trying to look disappointed. "That's too bad. I guess I'll just keep resting then." "Good idea." Her eyes swept the room behind me. "Is everything comfortable for you?" "Yes, thank you," I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. "The bed is very comfortable." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. "We'll be right outside if you need anything. Try to get some sleep." I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. They were buying time until Mark arrived. I had maybe an hour, possibly less. The gun under my pillow felt like a last resort I wasn't prepared to use, but the window was still my best option. I returned to it, opening it as quietly as possible. The night air was cold against my skin. Below, I could see the graveled driveway, the fake police cruiser parked alongside my own car. Beyond that was dense forest, and somewhere through those trees, the shoreline of Lake Michigan. I took a deep breath and swung my legs over the sill. As I lowered myself down, hanging by my fingertips from the windowsill, a car's headlights swept across the trees in the distance. Someone was coming up the driveway. Mark. I dropped to the ground, pain shooting through my ankles as I landed awkwardly. Crouching beneath the window, I peered around the corner of the cabin toward the approaching vehicle, a black SUV with tinted windows. The car stopped next to the fake police cruiser, and the driver's door opened. Mark stepped out, looking exactly as he had earlier that day in the office hallway. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, the confident posture of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. I shrank back against the wall as Mark approached the front door. Through the partially open window above me, I could hear Peterson greeting him. "She's in the bedroom, Mr. Reynolds, sleeping as far as we know." "Excellent," Mark replied, his voice sending chills down my spine. "Did anyone follow you here?" "No, sir, we were careful, just like you instructed." "And Davidson, have you heard from him?" "The woman spoke to him earlier. He's still several hours away." Mark laughed softly. "Perfect. That gives us plenty of time." I had to move, had to get away before they discovered I was gone. Staying low, I crept around the side of the cabin, heading for the trees. The forest was dark, but the moonlight provided just enough illumination to see where I was going. Behind me, I heard the cabin door open, then Mark's voice, louder now. "Emma, I know you're in there. We need to talk." I quickened my pace, pushing deeper into the woods. Branches scratched at my face and arms, but I didn't slow down. I had to put as much distance between myself and the cabin as possible. Then I heard it. The bedroom door being thrown open, followed by Mark's angry shout. "She's gone. The window's open." "We'll find her, sir," Peterson assured him. "She can't have gotten far." Flashlight beams cut through the darkness behind me, sweeping across the trees. I dropped to the ground, crawling now, trying to stay below the underbrush. The voices grew more distant as I continued moving away from the cabin, but the flashlights were spreading out, methodically searching the woods. They would find me eventually if I just kept running blindly. I needed a destination, some place to hide or someone who could help. I tried to remember if Richard had mentioned neighbors, other cabins nearby. Nothing came to mind. The lake. If I could reach the shoreline, maybe there would be boats, other houses, someone who could help. I changed direction, heading toward where I thought the water should be. The forest floor sloped gradually downward, which I took as a good sign. Behind me, the search party was getting closer. I could hear them calling to each other, coordinating their movements. "Check down by the water. She's heading north." How could they know which way I was going? I looked back and saw nothing but darkness, then realized they were tracking me. But how? My phone was still in the cabin, so it couldn't be that. My car keys were in my pocket. What else could they be using to follow me? Then it hit me. My work badge. The one I'd been wearing all day at the office. The one I hadn't thought to remove when I fled. Richard had mentioned once that all employee badges had tracking chips for building access. I yanked the badge from my belt and was about to throw it away when another thought stopped me. If I discarded it here, they'd know exactly where I'd been. Instead, I backtracked slightly and placed it carefully on a low branch pointing in the opposite direction from where I was actually heading. Then I continued toward the lake, moving as quickly and quietly as I could. The ground was getting muddier, the trees thinning out. I had to be getting close to the shore. Finally, I broke through the tree line and found myself standing on a narrow, rocky beach. The vast expanse of Lake Michigan stretched before me, the moon's reflection creating a silver path across the dark water. To my left, perhaps a quarter mile away, I could see lights, another cabin or house along the shoreline. To my right, darkness. I chose the lights, hoping to find help. As I made my way along the shore, I could hear shouting from the forest behind me. They had found the badge. "She went this way!" Spread out! She can't be far! I increased my pace, stumbling over rocks and driftwood. The lights were getting closer, and I could now make out the shape of a large house, with a private dock extending into the water. A boat was moored there, gently bobbing in the waves.